Welcome back to Creative Thinkers. Again, my name is Miguel Valenzuela, and today, as always, we bring you somebody special. Today we have Carlos Lee Sullivan. He is a lecturer at Northwest Campus here at EPCC. Well, I wanted to actually interview him because we want to try to focus on the artists that are lecturers, full-timers, and instructors here at our school. So today we bring you Carlos. He's better known as Lee.
Yes, hello, yeah.
So anyways, Lee, I wanted to come in and I wanted to bring you in and talk to you about a bunch of things. First of all, we always try to focus a little bit on who you are, where you came from, and how you ended up here in El Paso. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Oh yeah, so I grew up in Boise, Idaho. It's my origins, and then did a little art in high school, and then I went to my undergrad in Central Washington University in a little town called Ellensburg, Washington, which is sort of just at the foot of the Cascades before you go over to Seattle.
Oh, it must be beautiful.
Yeah, and there I was an art major, and I got my undergraduate in fine arts, and then immediately after that I came for my graduate education, the MFA at NMSU in Las Cruces, New Mexico. So I'm just right over next door to El Paso here. And then I finished my MFA in 2022, and then since then I've been teaching and adjuncting, and this is my first year as a full-time instructor.
Which is awesome. We're welcome, first of all.
Thank you.
But another thing that I want to focus on is why in the world you even started getting involved with art, because art is something that is very, I think, peculiar to certain people and not of interest to most. How did you get into it?
Well, I think originally it was just sort of like a silly pastime. I think a lot of people, when they start doing art, they do it as like a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, and I was just, sketching and drawing in my notepad, and I think I just had a really good high school teacher though, who had my had the studio open like all the time. And, I could come in at lunch and then after school and just be in there and paint, and I started to really fall in love with just the studio and the studio practice. And I think at that point I don't know, somehow I was able to start imagining myself as an artist. Right. And
so it wasn't something that you grew up with then?
No, no.
Interesting.
I think maybe that's something that is hard for a lot of people because I think a lot of people make art. They do drawings.
They do all the
people.
Time as kids, for sure.
And it's hard to imagine yourself as an artist, right? To make that connection, like, oh, I'm going to continue to do this. And so I think having the support of like my high school teacher was a big part of what kind of made me able to even envision that. And then I got to know a couple other, like just tattoo artists and people who were doing art in my local town in Boise, who also I think just helped me understand that there's like you can be someone who does art. Right. Which is I think that is a transformative thing. And then I went to school for art, and I just committed more and more to it over time as I just became more and more invested and convinced of it.
And you speak about it being a transformative thing, which I think everybody goes through. And that's one of the things. You started off learning about art and really kind of focusing on your abilities in art, but then you ended up getting a job or kind of having or starting a career here at EPCC as an adjunct teaching. And that's the thing that I want to focus on. I really want to kind of get deep down in as to why you're teaching, why you felt this was the right avenue for you. So you're at NMSU. You come and apply, I guess. You start kind of working here part-time, and then you now are full-time. As a full-timer, what do you think your focus is?
Well, delivering great classes, I think.
That's always the focus. I do the same thing, at least I think I do anyways.
I hope that's what I'm able to accomplish. That's what I'm trying for. That's what I'm spending a lot of my time thinking about. And I mean, delivering great classes, but I think to deliver a great class is to communicate like a lot of the core ideas about art and what art can offer other people, right?
And you went through that same process, I think, right?
Yeah.
Not having that kind of deep, fundamental understanding of what art is, meeting somebody that really propelled you into this whole art field, I think is the key. Do you feel like you want to do that?
I would like to do that. It's I guess it's something that's sort of in my back of my mind that I would like to be somebody who can like offer a doorway into the arts in some way, because I think I introduce some of my classes like this where I say that a lot of art seems like this thing that's locked away from us, right? We have no access to it. They don't seem that accessible. And I think one of the goals of us in like intro classes especially is to feel like it is accessible. Like you can
Right.
be invited into this space, and it's not, it can be for you, right? And I think that's one of the central goals that I try to do in my classes, or at least one of the things I'm thinking about a lot.
And I think there's a lot of different reasons for that, right?
Yeah.
It may be that one thing is that art is, I guess, part of the upper echelon, and
Yeah.
one says, I'm not part of that,
Yeah.
so I'm not even going to attempt that. But then we also have to understand that there are other reasons, like the environment, culture,
Yeah.
education that keeps us from these things. And I feel like what you're trying to say is that you're wanting to break those barriers down so people can come in to this whole art world. Why is that so important to you?
Well, I think it's, well, one of the ways to think about it is like that art really is around us all the time, whether we think about it or not.
It
like,
is.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like
I agree.
art and the visual world generally. And so I think it's like, it is vital to be able to understand visual communication in the visual worlds. And the study of that, I think, is art. And so you can become like a more aware person who understands how, we're in a political existence or moment right now, and how all these signs and all these symbols and visuals, that's part of what they're saying, right? It's not that they're not just speaking, they're also presenting visuals to you.
Correct.
And that's also part of the communication. So you can be someone who is aware of that stuff, and it's good for you to be aware of that, or you could kind of like lose your autonomy in that dimension, right? So I think it's vital in one hand to have that awareness. And another half, it's just enriching to your life, right? This is like, art has been used since the beginning of human making to just be this mode of self-expression. Like, how do I take something that's inside my head and make it in the world, right? And so art is usually the vehicle that happens through, and that's how you can kind of feel attached to the world, I think, in some ways.
And you bring it really, really far back,
Yeah.
all the way to the beginning of
Yeah.
existence, beginning of man. But I think it's important for us to understand that when these individuals were creating, they were creating something that was vital to them.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, hey, you know what, I got some extra time.
No.
I'm off of my cell phone. I'm not watching a TikTok today or anything like that. So now I have time to create artwork. It was almost like something that they needed in their lives.
Yeah.
Understanding that concept, how do you feel about how society deals with art today?
Oh, well,
And I think it's a really deep question.
Yeah,
But let's try to address it.
yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
But I do like thinking about how vital it was, because people did not have spare time as hunter-gatherers, and yet they were
that's
always
exactly
making this
right.
stuff.
Yeah.
Over and over again, we see them do it. And I think today still people do have a drive to create, right? They kind of, whether or not they have the time to do it in the forms we recognize as art, right? Whether you do a painting or a drawing formally that's going to end up in a frame, people don't necessarily make that kind of art all the time. But I mean, people do make a video, right? They'll take pictures. They'll do all this stuff that's visual and based on that kind of interaction.
Absolutely.
They still can't really help themselves from doing it. And
Yeah, because I think it's a vital part of living. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
It's just part of the human experience.
Yeah.
And in arts, we can maybe make you more aware that that's what you're doing. And then maybe if you're more conscious of, your artistic actions, whether you're just taking a photograph and then an artistic action also doesn't have to carry all this elitist baggage
all
to
this
it, right?
weight.
Yeah, it doesn't have to carry all that
Exactly.
baggage. It can just be this thing that you're, it can be a little release. It can be a little relief. It can be just this thing that you kind of have to do as a human being to just center yourself in the world.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. The fact that we have that ability as artists, as creators, and for some it's a learned thing, for some it's something that you have carried from the day that you were born. But I think it's important for all of us to understand that we have that ability to not just create, but to understand what we're talking about. I think us as instructors, right?
Yeah.
Us as teachers, us as professors, we want to allow the students to learn these things. What is one of the most important things that you do in your class that helps the students understand these things? These ideas, these concepts, whatever.
Well, when we talk about, in the studio class, we do drawings, we do just make artwork. But I think it's important in the process of doing that I'm trying to think, how specific should I be about like drawing
Be as
or just
specific
studio?
as you want. Yeah, any avenue you'd like.
I think,
because I do want to hit upon art
Yeah.
appreciation as well.
Yeah,
Because that's one class that most of us teach.
Yeah.
But in drawing, are there any specific things that you offer the students when teaching them drawing that helps them get a little bit more of an idea of what it is to be a creator? Let's say take a student that isn't in fine art, for example.
Well, the very first project we do is just an exploration of the tools. We call it the mark making drawing assignment. And we sit down and I just want you to start putting marks onto the paper. And I have a friend actually that described creativity generally it's a process of putting black on white, right?
Right.
And I thought that was a cool phrase that I learned once upon a time. But so that's the first thing, is just to break the boundaries of not being too precious about this material, right? So the creative act doesn't have to be something that's too, I want to say, doesn't have to carry that much pressure in it, right? And that's something I want to keep saying every time I introduce a project, is that this is a workshop environment, right? You don't want to be precious about your lines. You don't want to be too precious about the forms. You want to allow things to have a lot of flexibility to them.
Oh, absolutely.
And even when I talk about the projects, I mean, we do have specific goals, right? This is a class. We have learning objectives, but
exactly.
But part of the creative muscles that you can exercise is, we're doing a linear perspective drawing, so we're going to use linear perspective, but what is in the drawing and how you frame the drawing and how you interpret the lines, like there's a lot of space for creativity in there, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And there's a lot of space to take ownership of the drawing. And that there's an implicit challenge in every project to take creative ownership of this thing.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think the more a student takes advantage of that, the more they exercise the learning objectives we have specifically, and then they also exercise their creative muscles. That's how they really learn to grow. So that, tied to a sense that this is a workshop and that we're not, the stakes aren't really that high, right? Allows a student, I think, access to a more creative mindset.
And I think the fact that you allow them that flexibility helps them open their mind, right? If you're talking this and kind of speaking it out and allowing the students to have that understanding, then they are not just more open, but more free, more liberated.
Yeah.
And having said that, what is your opinion on how art affects society as a whole? Because some of the things that have been studied is that art makes us happier, art makes us freer, art opens our minds. What's your opinion?
I think,
because that's also a very broad question. But what can you say about that? And how does what you do at our school help these students with that?
Yes. I think, I agree with all that. The art, it makes a lot of sense that art would make you happy and would make you beautiful, or make life beautiful and seem beautiful.
It does, yeah.
I think what art does for society generally is allows it to sort of slow down and just look at the world as it is, right? That's how you are able to appreciate beauty in things, is that we can say, not that this building is just for walking into and just for using for whatever business purposes or government purposes, whatever, that this building can represent something, that we can sit there and just admire the building for its value as a thing, right? That somebody made this thing, that a statue can do this, that even your roads can have kind of an aesthetic quality to them.
Oh, absolutely. So I think everything does.
Everything does. Like your chairs are designed with a certain kind of beauty in mind. We don't think about them as art, but there's that's part of them, right? And so art, in an art mindset, is more about slowing down in order to appreciate the thing as it is, right? To be really there with the world. And even to come back to drawing, that's one thing we talk about in observational drawing, is it's learning to look very closely at things. It's a practice of looking and observing and being present and there.
And I think you begin to value things more. Like, for example, in one of my art appreciation courses, one of the focuses that I have is to help them understand and appreciate little things. As you just said, and one of the examples that I give them is I give them two bowls. I give them an ancient bowl made in ancient Mesoamerica, and then I give them a regular bowl. And I tell them, how are these similar? How are they different? Which one do we value more? So on and so forth. And they very quickly begin to understand that even though one is sitting in a museum and according to certain people is very valuable, we have one that's sitting in our cupboard, and it is the exact same thing. So what is the concept behind this? The concept is that we shouldn't allow ourselves to differentiate between the two until we understand why this one is also valuable. Right? And I think that's one of the things that you try to do in your classes based on what you're talking about. So give us an example of one of the projects that you do in drawing, aside from what you spoke of a second ago.
Let's see. I think we do those. Recently, I've been workshopping a new project that I call just a cross contour project. And this one, I want them to feel, and cross contour is a style of drawing where we have directional marks that express the form depending on the way the line turns.
Like an apple, right?
Yeah,
for example.
exactly.
Or a pumpkin is a perfect example.
Yeah, those lines in the pumpkins, those are cross contour lines, right?
Exactly.
And in this cross contour project, I want them to make an imaginary object. And my goal with the imaginary thing is to feel like how these lines are telling us about objects. And I think about lines always as information. These are always saying things. And as you're drawing this cross contour object, how can you just take this empty space that was nothing and then suddenly make a form, make an object feel like it's there? And then also in the process of drawing it, you can feel the object, this imaginary thing that doesn't even exist in the world. Suddenly you can feel it as you're drawing it, and I can feel it as I look at it. And that is, I think, a really amazing possibility in like just human experience, right? And I think that's a really cool thing. And just the ability to form imaginary things and make them real to everybody. I feel like I'm kind of repeating myself, but
no.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I'm taking from that is the concept behind creativity.
Yeah.
Just the idea of how an individual can make something basically from nothing.
Yeah.
You take an idea and then you bring it to fruition into a drawing, a sculpture, a breakfast, whatever, you know what I mean? And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people try to focus on but aren't really focused on because there are so many other things that are happening around them. If we have all this media happening, all of these events happening, I got to go to a monster truck show, for example, we don't generally have the time. Do you think that through your classes you try to incorporate this ability for them to learn to appreciate things more?
I hope so. That would be great if it's true. And I guess, I mean, coming back to some of the other things you mentioned, usually when we do critiques in classes, I try not to be too, like determined, like, oh, this is a bad artwork because it, didn't achieve its goals. I mean, we do have learning objectives, so I want to make sure we have that frame, but I also want to be able to understand the drawing just as it is. Like, and something I'll usually ask them is just, so, you made a decision in this drawing, and maybe it was a rush decision, maybe you were doing this at the last minute, maybe it was something that kind of came out suddenly, but what is it doing for the drawing, right? Because it's still doing something, and we can still learn something from this, picture, no matter what, right? It still can say things to us, it can still reveal really exciting things to us.
Right.
And even as a mistake, it almost has more possibility to reveal new and exciting things to us.
Absolutely, because that one thing leads to another, which is the beauty of art.
Exactly. And then so coming back to like the general sense of appreciation, I hope there's a realization that every visual decision that you make in an artwork or even other things, it's not about achieving certain ideals, like generic ideals of beauty, which are cool, but it's just an appreciation that the object is always saying something, right? And kind of looking at the object and trying to determine what is it saying and what can it say to us, right?
Absolutely. And speaking about that, one of the kind of ideas that I want to pull out from you is the fact that as a professor, I feel like you must have some sort of a goal. What is your goal when coming here to EPCC for the students and for, I guess, what you're trying to do as an educator?
Yeah, I think those are some of my broad goals. I think that kind of like open to creativity, this awareness that objects can reveal exciting things to us. I think they can plumb like the depths of our consciousness. Something I kind of doing my master's stuff, things I was thinking about in my end of my degree. But a lot at the end of that, I was thinking a lot about how the special space that art occupies is in revealing human experiences and representing them. And of course it does that, in personal, relatable ways, right? I can represent my experience to you and you can represent your experience to me. And it can feel really visceral and intense through artwork. And that's one way we can communicate those kinds of experiences. But art also has the possibility to reveal experiences that are even beneath or above that or beyond that, right? Things that none of us could even possibly think of. And that's how art opens up and unlocks new possibilities in thinking and consciousness, and it's done that throughout history, really. We talk about like its effect on society. I mean, art is part of what reveals and imagines new futures for a lot of the societies that practice art, right? And art is always part of the leading edge of where new things happen, right? it's always sitting there at the forefront of those kinds of things.
And one of the things that I always focus on is the fact that through art, at least this is my belief, through art we're able to create more things.
Yeah.
If we look at art, for example, if I go out and look at the Eiffel Tower and the Mona Lisa, and I travel to Paris, what kinds of other things am I going to think about? Is that something that you try to focus on in your classes? Do you try to enrich them in other ways?
I do try to. I guess when I was talking about the Eiffel Tower actually earlier today.
Were you really? Okay,
I
do
was.
tell.
That's funny. So I was talking
what were you saying?
I was talking about modern art because we're in this art history arc of the class right now.
Right.
And something that's really interesting to me about the Eiffel Tower is when I learned about it, my art historian, she was describing it as, her name was Dr. Avitz, and she always described the Eiffel Tower as this modernist object because it revealed like the skeleton of the building in front, and something that the modernists were really interested in and kind of guided a lot of their thinking was to take away all the excess and just show the thing almost literally without
the whole minimalistic idea.
Yeah. And I thought that was pretty interesting. The steel sculpture of the structure of the Eiffel Tower is also a celebration of just this new invention of steel, which is like, it's a cool representation of that as well. Like this monumental moment, and we're just celebrating steel and steel itself and steel structures, and that's a cool thing about the Eiffel Tower. But and I'm usually, when I'm talking about these things, I want to give a little sense of the history and the material of these objects, as well as sort of the purposes of them, like how do people use these, and how could we use them, and how could we understand them, right? Because these things they don't just exist in their time. While we look back, you mentioned like you look at the Eiffel Tower and you don't just know it from its historical context, you know it as a person living now, right?
Yeah, right.
And so all these things have...
And we may not have known it.
Yeah, we may not have known it.
Because they were going to tear that baby down.
Oh, dang. But, that we always have, objects always are going to speak to us, and they're going to speak to us differently. And we also have new associations. So we can look at this thing and it can be a portal for us to kind of reflect onto ourselves, our own assumptions, our own associations that we have with this thing, and then for it to surprise us by the way it then interjects or takes our associations in the journey it takes them down, right? Because you might walk up to the Eiffel Tower and have a certain kind of idea about it, preconceived about like, oh wow, the beauty of Paris. And you sit there and you stare at the steel beams, and maybe you start thinking about DNA, and then suddenly you have these new associations, and then you start thinking about the steel itself, and then you kind of make, it's this vessel for all these kinds of associations. All these ideas can start mixing in exciting and surprising ways.
And do you feel that that's something that you try to do in your class? Not just say, show them the Eiffel Tower, but you know what? You will also learn this through what I'm teaching you.
I do want to. I didn't meditate on the Eiffel Tower that much today. I use it as a point to talk about just steel structures and some of the modernist architecture, and then I talked about skyscrapers a little bit. But I do frequently want to come back to like, how can we take these ideas forward, right? How are these ideas now useful to us? And that's the kind of associations that spin on top of these objects is something I like to stress a lot. And well, to think about the art appreciation class, I think something that students like one way they think about arts, and it's like a common way to think about art, is like, oh, the meaning's not really there, right? We're just making it up. Yeah. And sometimes we are, and but that's not a bad thing, because that's actually the amazing thing about it, right? That we can just make meaning, right?
Yes.
That is actually the amazing thing that art suggests to us.
It's creation.
Exactly. And I was talking to a student about, he was writing his, analysis on an artwork, and he's like, do I talk about these ribs as bones or as lines? And like, yes. And he's like, yes, they're lines. Like, yeah, they are lines, right? We can talk about them as lines. It's a way of understanding them, right?
Right.
And we talk about them as lines in order to talk about, the movement in the bones, and then what other things can those lines suggest to us, right? We're just trying to kind of pull out what this picture, it was a picture, a photograph in that case, what the picture can mean.
And that's a powerful word. You use suggestion.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is one of the most powerful things that we can give and offer our students.
Yeah.
The suggestion of the possibilities of what is out there in the future for them.
Yes, yeah.
Do you try to do that through your art appreciation class? Because that's one of the things that I do in my art appreciation class, is I help my students grow as human beings through artwork.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you said it really well. It's just the suggestion of possibility. It's just really the core idea I think, and that's why art appreciation is a general ed course, is because, I mean, that's how it's useful to you as like a scientist, as a engineer, right? So your mind is open to new possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had a student he's an engineer, he's a mathematics student. I was just doing kind of this discussion in class, and he did say that, like, what was I talking about? I was talking about, like, what's the best role for the artist, and his suggestion was, it's the innovator role, right? An artist can suggest new possibilities, and like, yes, that's exactly right? And as a engineer or a mathematician, I mean, that's how you can really be at the forefront of your industry, is to be a creative thinker.
Yeah, you have to be a creative thinker. Mm-hmm. One of the kind of concepts that I ran into just recently is the fact that I was going to a teachership academy, and in the teachership academy, one of the things that we talked about was, what do you think the top 5, what did they say in HR, what are the top 5, I guess, elements that they're looking for within a new hire? And I said, well, number 1 it has to be creativity. They're like, nope, number 1 is problem solving. I'm like, problem solving is creativity. But the whole point, I think, of why we're here right now is because we want to talk about how important us being here for the students is, and how we can help them. Do you have one last comment that you can say to the public or to the student body about what you do for our school and for them?
Yes. Let's see. I think we covered a lot of the big ideas. You
know what? We run out of time here very quickly, just something real quick. Maybe a piece of advice.
A piece of advice. I would say, I'll repeat a common piece of advice is, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. I think that's something we learn in creativity, and thinking about creativity that's what unlocks it, is being aware that, I mean, mistakes is really how the best kinds of things come about, right?
And beautifully said.
Yeah.
And I wanted to thank you for taking the time out to talk to us today, Lee. Yeah. And it was amazing to talk to another artist about art, and another instructor here at EPCC. Yeah. And I wanted to thank all of the viewers out there for also tuning in. And I want you guys to remember that we now have EPCC TV on YouTube. And I want to ask all of you guys to please tune in, watch our shows. We have a whole bunch of different shows here at EPCC TV. So if you guys could please subscribe down here, and we will see you guys next time. Thank you very much. Thank you.